Hey everyone, this is Carter, and welcome to this episode of Making It Up, the conversation series where I sit down and interview other writers. Free-flowing conversations, nothing prepared in advance, so who knows where the conversation's going to go? Who knows how long it's going to last? In the case of my guest today, it lasted longer than usual, and it could have gone on a lot longer because I was having a hell of a good time during the conversation. Before we get to who that guest is, quick note, my company Unbound Writer is offering one-on-one coaching, writing coaching with me, self-guided online courses as well, and from time to time I offer retreats or just seminars, in-person seminars, so go to unboundwriter.com and check that out. All right, so today I talked to Dan Mallory. So if you don't know the name Dan Mallory, you will certainly know the name A.J. Finn, the name under which he writes. So Dan, I don't know if I should call him Dan or A.J. in these intros or outros, but I'm going to go with Dan. So Dan's got a great story, and he's a very engaging person. So that's why the conversation went a little bit longer than most of my episodes. He studied English in school and worked in the publishing industry, and I'm really making this highly reductive. And when he wrote The Woman in the Window, which was released, I believe, in 2018, it was the first thing he had ever written, first novel. And if you know anything about that book, it went through the roof, and not in the way of like, yeah, this debut did really well, because a lot of debuts do well. No, it was a fucking phenom. Debuted number one on the New York Times bestseller list. So that is substantial. I spoke to him quite a bit about just leading up to releasing that book and working in publishing at the same time. In fact, the publisher who bid and won the rights to publish Woman in the Window was the company he was working for, HarperCollins. And he just followed up. It was a bit of a delay, and we talked about, how do you follow up a book like that? But he just launched earlier this year in January, I believe, his book End of Story, which he said, first draft came in at 191,000 words, so he had to cut about 80,000 of those. So we had a great conversation that ranged from schooling to struggling with bipolar issues, to his dog, to just a lot about the publishing industry, kind of an insider's look because of all his experience within it. Really, really a fun conversation for me. I got to know him a little bit when we were at the Hamptons Who'd Done It in New York last month, which is when I first met him, and he was the moderator on one of my panels. Then I got to talk to him more just one-on-one. I'm like, oh, this guy's really interesting. So he's a fascinating conversationalist. We had a really good time. Also, he knows the band James. So that's a bonus in my eyes. You're going to like this one, folks. This is a great one. Listen to the whole thing. It's fantastic. This is my conversation with A.J. Finn.
Look at the scenery I've arranged for you.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Thank you. Just for you, buddy. The thing is, in my place in New York, where I had assumed I would be conducting this interview, I've got this lovely library that was custom built, filled with books, and now I'm literally in the corner of. I'm so sorry. Thank you.
You're going to piss off so many people because your scenery sucks. So last minute trip to London just because?
So by we, first person plural, I mean the dog and I. She says hi, by the way.
Yes.
We're relocating. This has been in the works for quite some time. I lived here for a long time before moving to New York. And for assorted reasons, I found I needed to get over here quite quickly. And again, thank you for so graciously accommodating me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, there's nothing suspicious about international travel that has to be done quite quickly.
You'll know all in about 72 hours, my friend.
No.
Am I properly situated for your purposes? Am I properly lit?
I think you have a much higher expectation of this podcast than what the reality is.
But look at where you are. God, that's
This is my
stunning.
office.
Is this where you work?
Yeah, this is my house.
Are
So
these, oh my gosh, look at those framed prints.
I
Those
know.
are
Well, so I
beautiful.
started doing that with my first book because your book comes out and you start to go to some local bookstore. So I'm like, I want to have something to put on a little easel. And then I just started doing it. I'm like, yeah, why the fuck not, man? I'm proud of myself. I've written some books.
Should be.
So
And
it's a little bit egotistical, but I like it.
they look great too. I mean, they really pop.
Oh, thank you.
Do you have a favorite jacket, US jacket amongst your US jackets?
I think the latest one, Tell Me What You Did, because of the orange.
The orange, yeah, I
Like I
agree.
just, it's so funny when you get a book cover because, like, as you know, and we'll get into it because you not only are you obviously a very well established author, you are in the publishing industry, so you know
Mhm.
kind of obviously how the sausage is made, but you get certain amount of input with the book covers, but it's somebody else's vision ultimately, and they know what they're doing because this is their job. And but you always have input. And I remember Tell Me What You Did came out with the book cover, and I'm like, I have zero changes. This looks amazing. This is eye grabbing. And you have to think about what it looks like on a iPhone screen,
Yep.
all these things. So it's
It's
amazing.
the orange is striking. It's highly legible, which is, you gave them a title to work with too. That's a great
Oh no,
title.
that's their title.
Was it really? Oh, so what
Yeah.
did you do for this book
So
exactly?
yeah, I didn't even write it. They just I'm the face. But I find that too. It's interesting. So I'm with Source Books Poison Pen Press, and they are
Yep.
very market driven on their titles. And so they're like, "Hey, give us 50 titles. We don't care. We'll test them all." And I'm like, "Okay, So my original title was "Confess to Me," which is a shorter way of saying "Tell me what you did." But "Tell me what you did" just tested much higher. So I'm like, "Who am I to argue with it? I don't know how
Wait,
all that stuff works."
Confess to Me is good, but Tell Me What You Did is better. And I have to say, at the risk of sounding condescending, but speaking as a former editor and publisher, that kind of attitude, yours, I mean, is refreshing and ultimately, if not absolutely necessary to a successful career, then pretty integral. I worked with a lot of authors who would dispute everything. And our publishers always write, no, of course not.
Yeah.
But enough of us know what we're doing across enough departments that
Right.
it's worth going with our recommendation.
Yeah, and I think that's valid. I mean,
My
even with
hunch.
titles, they'll not just show me, or the covers, they'll not just show me the cover, they'll show me the comps. They'll write up, this is why we position it like this. But you make a good point because sometimes I feel like, because I am very much just like, you do what you do best, I'll do what I do best, and hopefully there'll be a great collaboration.
Yeah.
But I think the risk of that is sometimes is that maybe I do have more to say that I'm not saying, or I don't know because you just assume everybody knows more than you because that's the inherent imposter syndrome that an author has. Even with editorial letters, I take all the
Mhm.
suggestions almost always because I recognize them as good, but I also know that
Mhm.
you, the editor, are looking at this much more market focused than I am. And that's the goal is we want to sell as many books as possible.
Mhm.
So why would I not listen to that? But you do wonder, like, am I short undercutting myself at all? I don't know. What do you think?
Setting that particular query to one side just for the moment, I would add that as an author, it is in your best interests to manage your relationship with your publisher in such a way that you don't annoy them.
Right.
I am mindful of a good friend of mine who is one of the best editors in American publishing, one of the most successful publishers, and somewhat unusually, some years ago, she published a thriller. It's not what she usually does, and the thriller was very successful. And there was a follow-up, a sequel, a proper sequel by that same author, and it was not as successful. And I asked my friend why this was, and she said, well, he shrieked if I tweezed a comma
Oh,
and fought me every step of the way. And ultimately, it led to a book that was unto itself not particularly successful, but it also soured his
yeah.
relationships with other members. And you can't do that. We
Yeah.
hear stories about prima donna authors. Those are usually authors who are almost untouchably far advanced in their career.
Right, right, right.
Fine. But
Yeah.
most of us, you, me, 98% of those publishing are not in a position to piss off our publishers, which again does not mean that we should blindly kowtow, but it's best to give them the benefit of the doubt, I find.
Yeah, because you're entering a relationship that could span potentially years and years.
Potentially years and years.
And if your first few books are midlist books, they're making a profit, but they're not crazy great. Like just like any other company, like why do I want to work with this person? This person's a
They don't
pain
have
in
to
my
publish
ass.
you. Yeah, exactly. They don't have to publish me,
Right,
right?
right, right.
Uh,
So, and I know, obviously, Dan, you and I got to know each other at Hampton's Who Done It, and we had some time to talk. And I'm a little fascinated by your story. But you, and I know your schooling, but prior to schooling, were you having writing aspirations, creative aspirations? Did you know what you wanted to get into at a young age?
no, not really. I remember taking a creative writing course my senior year of college, which I enjoyed, but like most people, I think guys in particular in their senior year of college, I wanted to write like John Fowles
Right, right.
and
But what were you studying? Like, what was your major in college?
English.
It was English. Okay, so you
And
were
I
going in
loved
that
it was
direction.
English. Yep. I wasn't good at anything else. I wasn't particularly good at English either, but I was literate. That was
Yeah.
the minimum requirement I met. And went on to grad school after college and finished my MPhil in the UK. I recognized even then that I was not a natural academic. And also, I've spoken about this elsewhere. I became very, very depressed during that time. I'd been quite depressed for a few years. It was not diagnosed as bipolar disorder for another 14 years.
Right. So
So
just to
that that
interrupt real
was that
quickly, we're
was a
not talking
challenge.
about I'm away from home and I'm depressed. We're talking about chemical clinical
No,
depression.
yes, it was very severe. And one of the ironies, I guess would be the term of bipolar disorder or treatment thereof, is that antidepressants actually make it much, much worse if they're administered as what's it called, monotherapy, as a solo medication.
Right.
And bipolar disorder is routinely misdiagnosed as depression. So it's pretty natural for a psychiatrist to dispense antidepressants, and then you
Right.
spend
Because it
14
makes the
years making
mania
yourself worse.
it makes you the mania that much worse because you swing and it's
It does.
right. My son has gone through
Yep.
similar things, and it's so important to parse between depression and bipolar because if you have those swings, both those swings need to be treated and not just one. Yeah.
Yep. And of course, when discussing bipolar disorder, we tend to fixate on the mania because that's the splashy end of the spectrum. It's
Hmm.
kind of, it's not sexy, but it's interesting to talk about. Whereas depression, well, Kay Redfield Jamison, who's one of my favorite writers, she's a leading authority on bipolar disorder. She is herself a psychiatrist and she is herself bipolar. She wrote in her book, An Unquiet Mind, which is one of my favorite memoirs of all time, that quite bluntly, she wrote, "You are boring when you're depressed." And it's true.
Hmm.
Mania, at least, is, oh gosh, some of the stuff I've thought or said. It is quite funny in retrospect. Whereas depression is just a slog. So I spent several years at Oxford quite depressed. I finished my degree and then moved to New York because I recognized, as I said, I was not a natural academic. And that's not me being modest. I was not.
Right.
And yet I came back for more. So I went to New York and having long loved crime fiction, I was excited to score a job with a lady who edited crime fiction and romance novels at what was then just Random House and is now Penguin Random House.
Right.
And while I was not a romance reader, I really appreciated the opportunity to work on those books because, and I recognize that I risk offending some here, publishing is a business.
Of course.
I don't mean to dispute the value of literature, and I don't want to, quibble about the definition of literature, but ultimately, if books are not making money, there will not be publishers to produce these books, and there will not
100%.
be
Right.
authors who can write them. I remember working in the UK years later at a publishing house down the hall from a woman who edited so-called literary fiction, and she once said to me that she viewed it as a badge of honor when one of her books lost money because it meant, that the hoi polloi didn't get it. And I thought, who doesn't view that as a badge of honor? Probably the author, if
Right.
or the shareholders,
Right.
if
Right.
you ask me.
Right.
And again, I don't mean to sound mercenary about this, but I was interested in working on books that not only made money, but attracted a readership. Because
Right.
no author can look me in the eye and tell me honestly that they don't want anyone to read their book.
Right.
Of course, you want people to read your book, right?
Right, right, right. Everyone dreams, every author dreams of having that be their full-time job, which is a terribly difficult thing to achieve.
Mhm.
But even for a good selling author, it's almost impossible to achieve. So, if you're only selling a few books and you're losing money, that badge of honor only goes so far until the mortgage payment is due.
Well said, yes. So I worked at Random House for 2.5 years and really loved it. I loved working on crime fiction in particular, and amongst the authors with whom I worked was Tess Gerritsen, whom you
Yeah,
will have seen.
who's
And
just a
did you get to
lovely
meet her?
person. Yeah,
Isn't she the best?
she's the greatest. Yeah, she's been on the show and she's just a genuine person.
She, as you'll know then, having interviewed her, she's completely unpretentious,
Mhm.
despite all that she's achieved. And I wasn't kidding when at Hampton's Whodunit, I described her as a role model
100%.
because
Yeah,
she treated me well, and I was just an editorial assistant. I was nobody,
right.
and she couldn't have been more gracious or patient with me, and she's been kind to me in the 20 years ever since. So anyway, after 2.5 years of that, I thought I do miss life in the UK, and you know what? I was pretty miserable throughout my graduate school years, so maybe I should give them another go at the doctoral level. Maybe I'm in a better mood now. Nope, no, wasn't. Nope. And I was
Well,
still no better.
I mean, it's interesting that you were missing it despite some pretty awful memories of being there.
It's funny. I was in Oxford today. I came back just a couple hours ago, having taken the train up this morning, and it is the place I have lived longer than any other place aside from New York. I
Right.
was there for more than 5 years, and I do have a lot of very fond memories,
Great.
mostly of my friends and my housemates. I saw some of my friends today. I
Mhm.
reconnected with my DPhil supervisor today.
Hmm.
So personally, I feel enormous affection for the place. And
Got it.
I got to visit my college library. So within Oxford, you've got about 40 colleges, each of which operates with some autonomy. And mine features a collection, a curated collection in its library of books by so-called old members, by the alumni. And it was such a thrill to see my books in an exhibit, effectively, in a
Right.
collection.
Right.
Next to like John Fowles, who also went to the college and
Right.
whose name is also
That's
begins
amazing.
with an F. Yeah, it was very, very cool. It made me feel great. In any event, I still was not a natural academic. So more than 2 years into my doctorate, I suspended status and went down to London to continue working in publishing at a more senior level. And I learned a lot. There was a great deal about British publishing that I liked. Mostly the majority of my colleagues and the majority of the authors I worked with. British, the British crime writing community is, in my experience, significantly more insular than that in
Hmm.
America.
Hmm.
In part, I think because it is geographically, physically, a much smaller country. And
Right.
so they all live in relative proximity to each other, relatively close proximity, as opposed to America, where you're in Boulder. Tess Gerritsen is, well, now she's in Maine. You've got people in San Francisco,
Right.
our
Everywhere.
paths might never
Coast to
crisscross.
coast.
Yeah, precisely. Also, on the publishing side of things, yes, all publishers, most publishers, not all, most publishers are in New York City, but the industry is still so large that plenty of people don't know one another. Whereas in London, they all know one another.
Yeah.
And there is a crime fiction festival seemingly every week. And this can familiarity really can lead to contempt. And
Mm-hmm, hmm.
while there are scads of terrific people in British publishing, again, the vast majority of them, both authors and publishers alike, it can get a bit, in my experience, a bit catty. And I didn't love that
Hmm.
about office life. Uh,
Interesting.
so yeah, it was that's a story for off mic, I think.
Uh-huh.
But eventually I made my way back to New York and worked for HarperCollins, having worked at Hachette before. And at HarperCollins, I got to build my own list. I wasn't replacing anybody, which was exciting
Yeah.
uh, because it meant I got to start effectively from the ground up. I did inherit a few authors with whom I loved working, and I was there for 4 years before I decided to write The Woman in the Window. And ultimately, my own employer was the publisher who bought it.
So just to interrupt there real quickly,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
your your through line working through both the education and through various stints with publishers,
Mhm.
you can start to crystallize a vision of your future in terms of I want to reach editorial director or I want to do this. Where did writing play a role in that? Was writing a novel something that was always a seed that you wanted to see grow, or was it just whimsical?
It really wasn't. And I loved working in publishing. I sincerely did, but was not, despite reports, actually especially ambitious about it. I like work. I
Hmm.
do like work,
Hmm.
and the people pleaser in me likes to do good work. I think I'm very typically an oldest child.
Uh-huh.
Uh, as a writer, though, I didn't feel particularly inspired. I certainly was not the first editor to attempt to write a novel.
Hmm.
But I didn't attempt to write a novel, and it didn't really occur to me to do so until I felt there was something I wanted to say.
Right.
I think, I guess I don't know what the point would have been really if I were doing it as an exercise.
Right.
Uh,
Right. So you
because
needed that organic kind of now's the time.
yeah, yeah, but well said. Because let's be honest, most books written by most people are not going to get published.
Right.
So you got to ask yourself, is this actually a fruitful use of my time? Am I
Right.
going to learn something from this?
Did you have a sense because you're on the inside and you're working with HarperCollins before you wrote The Woman in the Window, did you ever have a sense of like if I were to write a book, I do have an edge because my guess is that it doesn't give you an edge just to work with a publisher. Publishers are still like the book has to sing to us.
Yeah.
But was there that possibility of like, yeah, they might take it on because I work here?
So I really appreciate you phrasing it that way. And I agree. I cannot imagine a circumstance under which a publisher would say, ugh, we don't actually believe in the book, but hey, he works here, or
Right. Right.
we like him.
Right.
Uh, I do think that working in publishing gave me an advantage in that it brought me into the orbit of agents.
Right.
And later, it also proved very useful to me in that, unlike most authors, I understood more or less how the publishing process worked. So I was less inclined to feel bewilderment or disappointment
Right.
or anything like that. But I think it is telling that when we submitted my novel, which took me about 12 months to write, I started in the summer of 2015 and we submitted it in September 2016. When my agents in the US and the UK submitted my novel, they did so pseudonymously. And to this day, I am asked by journalists, "Oh, why'd you choose a pseudonym?" As though they've caught me out.
Hmm.
It is not a secret at this point. I chose a pseudonym for a number of reasons. First, I was working in the publishing industry,
Right.
and I did not want anyone in receipt of the submission to say, "Oh, Dan, we like him," or "We don't like him." So we're biased one way or the other. I didn't think anyone would necessarily not like me because I only worked at three publishing houses over however
Right.
many years.
Right.
I
Right.
I only knew so many people. But I wanted the manuscript to be assessed on its own. Secondly, I really liked my job and I did not intend to leave it. And I thought it would be weird for the authors whom I published to walk into a bookshop and see their book next to Dan Mallory's
Right.
book.
Is there a conflict of interest? Is there, right? Whatever.
What it just would make them uncomfortable, I
Right.
think.
Right.
Uh, and finally, I actually I can turn this on you. So when I saw that I would get to speak to you, I deliberately did not learn anything about you. I wanted to read the book first. I did not know whether you were a he Carter or a she Carter.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
That name can, in my experience, go either way.
Yeah.
I've met,
Totally.
yeah. And I think it's the case for me that I actually don't want to know much about an author.
Totally.
I like sort of a blank. If I see initials, I just skip that part basically, and I focus on the
Right.
title.
Right. Right.
So, so that's why we went that route. And almost immediately, I remember I was assigned sort of ulterior motives. I remember speaking to the Wall Street Journal. This was July of 2017. I was in Chicago. This was before the book was published, about 6 months before. And I was doing some sort of pre-publicity interview with the Wall Street Journal. And the interviewer said to me, "Oh, are you trying to trick women readers into reading your book by
Hmm.
adopting initials, by not identifying yourself as a man?" And I said to her, this was probably a bit cheeky of me, but the question annoyed
Of
me.
course. Yes.
And I said, "Well, A, I'm talking to you, so I'm not doing a very good job hiding myself. B,
Right.
the photo we've distributed to you features me in all my stubbly glory. It was darker then, but
Right. Right.
stubble. And C, actually, all market research indicates that women are agnostic when it comes to author genders. They don't care.
Hmm.
It's men who more typically will not read a book if it's
Hmm.
written by a woman. So if
Interesting.
anything, I'm
Right.
losing a potential readership here.
Right. Right.
Uh,
Right.
anyway, that's how we got to AJ Finn, a name that was cobbled together from the name of one of my cousins, Alice Jane, who goes by AJ, and another friend's French Bulldog. As you know, I am a fan
Right. Right.
of
It wasn't Finnegan's
of the
Wake. It
breed.
was a bulldog.
Oh
um,
man, I should have gone with that.
but
Damn it.
so I want to back up a little bit because it's funny. I talk to a lot of authors, obviously, and you know authors famously say to me, "Oh yeah," and then when I wrote the book, I did this and this. But we skip over the part of like, "You wrote a fucking book, man." That's like it's a big deal,
Right.
and it's it
Thank you.
is it is very difficult to do, and your trajectory is really fascinating because I'm is this but now was the woman in the window, obviously you took creative writing, you an English major, you've done a lot of writing, but had you written a novel before?
I had
Okay.
not. No.
So
And
you write this novel in 12 months, which is
that is
fast.
pretty zippy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty fast. That's an established author's pace, not a
Yep.
debut novelist's pace, in my viewpoint. Um, and it you get agents with it, which is hard to do, if not
Yep.
impossible to do. Um, and then, spoiler alert, it goes on to this just kind of breathtaking, unbelievable success that very few debut novelists
Yeah.
experience, especially debut novels where you're truly a debut novelist. It's not like you had three in the drawer that just
I
never
did
sold.
not. No, that's true.
Um,
Yes.
and so, I'd like to hear a little bit about what, how that journey was, and then also if there was an ever moment where like, does that taint you in the sense of like, you know, I, I just what do I do next?
Oh gosh, yes. So I've got and by the way, am I talking too much? I worry that I'm just prattling over you.
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
This is why this podcast exists, to listen to the author talk.
So in the summer of 2015, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder.
Hmm.
And I felt offended by this. I remember
Huh.
arguing with the psychiatrist, and I'm ashamed of that. I really am. But
As opposed to feeling relief almost of like, okay, now we know what this is.
which eventually I did register, but at the time, I felt argumentative and I got my backup because, as I said elsewhere, I thought of bipolar people as unreliable, dishonest, unsuccessful, crazy,
Right. And it's
and
not in the family, so that was like it's easier to kind of be like,
not that I knew of.
yeah,
Yeah,
right,
this
right.
is
That,
grandma.
this
Yeah.
diagnosis can't be me because this is clearly a genetic thing. And
Yep. Yeah, well said. Yep. And I just thought of myself as sort of complicated. Uh, but eventually I accepted this diagnosis and I was prescribed, amongst other drugs, lithium.
hmm
And I spent a couple of weeks that July, it was around the time of my birthday, at home on a break from work, adjusting to this new medication because I had to titrate off the antidepressants I'd been on for however many years
Right,
and
right.
ramp up a new regimen. And it was while I was at home on a summer evening, I think it was a weekend, that I looked across the street. I was living in Chelsea in New York, which is full of these brownstones. And I looked across the street and I saw this woman in the townhouse opposite mine. She was looking sort of disheveled and she wore a bathrobe. I think it was pink. And she was aiming a remote at her television. And around this time, I was watching a lot of Hitchcock. I love Hitchcock and
Right.
I
So
find
this
him
has
quite
got very rear window.
very Rear Window, which
Yeah.
I'd been watching. And it occurred to me as I beheld this woman that much as I love Rear Window, what's laying Jimmy Stewart up isn't actually that interesting. It's a broken leg.
Right.
And at the risk of sounding grossly pretentious, isn't a broken mind sort of more
Right.
interesting?
Right. Right. Way more interesting.
It is way more
Yeah.
interesting,
Yeah.
actually. Not that my work is superior to Rear Window, but I think that
It's
is
much
a
more modern too.
yes, correct. Yeah, well said. So I started writing this book. This character strode into my head. And what I will say, both for and against the woman in the window, is that the mystery is fine in my experience. As a writer, as a reader, and as a publisher, it's fine. It's a
Yeah.
it's a perfectly good little thriller knot. The reason people seem to have embraced this book
Yeah.
was that character. Readers seem to have found her emotionally resonant,
Yeah.
and it's really her narrative that keeps them coming back and keeps them recommending the book. And certainly it was that character who intrigued the agent friend to whom I reached out with this idea.
Yeah. Well, that's a really interesting point. And because I have this conversation all the time, I was just listening before this call to pitches for people who are
Mhm.
practicing pitches and for Thriller Fest, aspiring authors, and you hear these pitches that are these intricate plots. And my response is always like, why do I care? Like
Yeah.
who's the person that, and I'm not saying that somebody I have to like, but why do I care? And I've always contended that for psychological thrillers, domestic suspense needs to really be emotion forward. It needs to be, we need to feel. That's why I love first person present tense, because it's just that you can't avoid the emotional aspect of it.
Mhm.
And you have to be, I think, very empathetic writer to be able to do that. But without that emotional connection, those tendrils, then plots kind of don't matter at that point because we don't care it's interesting, it's unique, it's different, it's creative,
Mhm.
but I don't feel it in my soul when I'm reading it.
Roger Ebert, the late film critic, whose work I really love, not least because
Great writer.
he was a seriously underrated writer,
Oh,
I think.
I've read his biography.
Oh, did you? Life itself, it's so good.
Yeah, it's
It's
so
so
good.
good.
Yeah.
I remember him writing of Basic Instinct that it is a cleverly constructed crossword puzzle and just as disposable. You finish it, you throw it away.
Oh,
And a
interesting.
lot of people like those sorts of books,
Right,
and
right.
I don't begrudge them that, but it is not really what I was. For one thing, I wasn't sure I could come up with a plot sufficiently interesting on its own to keep a reader engaged. But
Right.
it's also not the sort of book I like reading too much of, I guess. I like a character.
Right.
Um,
100%. Like you want to embody them in a way, and because it you know that's you as the writer, even though you're completely disconnected perhaps from the character, you still have this emotional resonance that you can draw from
mhm,
high school, from whatever. Like, I
mhm,
remember when this
mhm,
happened to me, or this is how I think I would feel were this to happen to me. And you can dip into that. But I think that's harder to do than we think. And I'm
mm,
not trying to say we're great writers necessarily, but I'm saying, like, to make that emotional connection, I do think you have to be a very emotional person. And because otherwise it feels very two-dimensional. We've all read those two-dimensional books where, you know, yeah, we get it. We understand why we're supposed to care about the character, but it's heavy-handed, or I just feel like you don't understand your own character in a way. So this book, but then this book just takes off in a way that I'm sure. I mean, I know you know ahead of time when pre-sales are great, and this is looking like it might make the Times list, which is crazy. But then when it goes so far stratospheric beyond that, are you sitting there being like, because for me, sometimes it's like I don't deserve any of this. This
oh,
is
all the time.
weird. The book's not that good. Do you go
Yeah,
into that place at all?
regularly. I live there. That is my mailing address. I remember, as I said, I did not intend to leave my job, and for a solid year, I remained in it. My employer had won this auction for my book, and I will say, at the risk of sounding immodest, that one of the highlights of my life was the Monday and Tuesday I spent in Palm Springs, where I happened to be on holiday when my agent submitted this manuscript to publishers. And I just lounged poolside and fielded phone calls with these editors at New York publishing houses. And I just thought this is a parody. I'm
Wow.
going to wake up. And
Right. And the
ultimately,
fact that you're talking to editors and it's not all just communication with your agent is also
oh,
different than normal.
it was thrilling. We'd submitted at that point, we had just to get into the weeds of it, we'd received offers from 8 bidders, and my agent said, "Right, that's enough. We've got a critical mass here. It's time for you to out yourself to them." And so I wrote a letter to each of these publishers, and at the same time that we submitted it to them, I remember we raised the minimum bid, which made me a little nervous because I thought, well, what if people drop out because the minimum is too high, but it redounds negatively to me because it looks as though they dropped out once
Right.
I outed
Right.
myself.
Right. Right.
But only 2 of the 8 dropped out because they said of the minimum bid. And so I got to spend the next couple days talking to these 6 remaining editors and publishers, most of whom I did know, as it turned
That's
out.
so weird.
It was weird, but also in a splendid way, really quite reassuring
Yeah.
because these people knew me and wanted to work
Right.
with me anyway.
Local
And
boy makes
ultimately,
good.
yes, yeah, it did feel like that. And ultimately, my own employer of by that point 4 years won, which also was, reassuring. And for a year, I continued to work with them for
Mm.
more than a year, in fact. And they were complete pros about it. Nobody ever knocked on my door at the office asking to speak to AJ Finn. Everything went through my agent. They were great. And then about 3 months before the book was published, so this would have been like October 2017, my antennae kind of quivered. I sort of knew the book was going to work.
Yeah.
I'd published enough books that I could tell
Right.
when something would come good.
Right.
And so I tendered my resignation, but didn't actually leave until 4 days before the book was published, which
Hmm.
was December. And then when it came out, uh, I remember as 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 you'll know, Nielsen, the same company that tracks TV ratings, also
Right.
tracks book sales.
Hmm.
And Nielsen issues to publishers a rundown of book sales by units around the same time on a Wednesday afternoon that the New York Times issues its list to publishers. And usually you get the Nielsen list first, and so you might spend a couple hours guessing where a given book might end up on the Times list because the two do not neatly correspond.
Right.
And the Nielsen list arrived, and The Woman in the Window was narrowly number one.
Wow.
And we had thought it might debut at 7 or 8 or
But
something. I don't
even
know how.
like debuting on the Times
Oh my
list,
God.
It's fucking
It's
crazy.
massive,
Yeah, yeah.
massive. And so I thought, oh, it would be exciting to get, into the upper echelons of the list. And then I had a call from my agent who said, you're number one on the Times list.
Oh my God. What a great call. You must
Yes.
remember that moment.
I was I was in bed. I don't know why. It wouldn't have been that late in the day, but and then as we were on the phone, or just after we finished talking, I forget which, my editor called, and I answered, and she was with the assembled parties at my publisher, and they said, "Well, guess what?" And I said, "Oh, I just spoke to my agent. I'm number one." And they sounded sort of deflated. And to this day,
I can't believe you stole their thunder.
I know I was such a jerk. Uh, but to see it debut like that was exciting. It was also testament to how well published it had been.
Right. Right.
Uh, a book can't succeed like that if it's been badly
No, and
published.
that is so worth underscoring because there, months and months and months before the release date, there are things happening that most, a typical reader wouldn't know,
Yep,
obviously. And if anything, that lead time has gotten even longer now because there's more mechanisms, more influencers,
more
Goodreads, all that
influencers.
stuff. So there is stuff going on. So having it well published is a great comment and very respectful comment because it's absolutely true.
I've got nothing but respect for publishers who nobody gets into the publishing business for the money.
Right? Especially
Even
authors.
especially the authors, am I right? But editors are not, it's not hugely remunerative. They do
No,
it
and it's a
because
lot of work.
it's so much work. And there are frankly quite a lot of people in the industry who are not particularly inspired in every department.
Right.
And so when you have the luck and the privilege to work with a team, I realize this sounds like an Oscar speech, but when you are fortunate enough to work with people who are willing to work with you,
Right.
it's uh, I feel very, very lucky. I
Right.
really do.
Well, and that's why I think, when we talk to aspiring writers, that's a little bit of the difficult situation for people who are trying to get their stuff published, particularly with agents and with editors, is you really want to be with those who just see it. They're like, I'm so passionate about your work, as opposed to, yes, this is serviceable and it'll work for us. And, there's no there's very few authors who are going to turn down
Yeah, no.
first, but the point is no less true, right? Because there are editors out there who purchase things that they think are going to work, but they're not
Mhm.
necessarily passionate about it, and
Yes.
that can be tough because it might not get the attention of a work that somebody's just like, this is, I can't wait to see what this does in the wild.
Publishing is kind of alchemical in that. So John Karp, who's the head of Simon and Schuster and is a very, very brilliant editor and publisher, once said, he said this to me, but I think he said it more generally, that publishing is basically legalized gambling. And I think that's completely fair. It is difficult to pinpoint how and why one book works and another doesn't, particularly in fiction,
Right,
I think.
right,
In nonfiction, especially in like celebrity memoir, it's kind of easy to see why a
right,
book
right,
might work or might not. Sometimes
right,
there are surprises,
right.
but in fiction, people do like to point to enthusiastic editors, champions in-house who will bang the drum relentlessly. And while that's sort of a, this sounds dismissive, kind of a pretty sentiment, let's tease it out. Let's talk that out. So, okay, to whom are they banging the drum in-house? Well, they're talking to marketing people and they're talking to salespeople. Okay, so what are those teams doing respectively? These days, marketing people are working very closely with influencers.
Right.
Publishers are aware that influencers are influential. They don't know how.
Right.
I don't know how either. I'm not,
Right.
shaming them here. And it's difficult to quantify the effects of any given influencer or even influencers collectively. We look at a novel that debuts to 140 or 150,000 hardbacks in a couple of days, which is
Tho-
mind blowing.
Those are big numbers. Yeah.
Those are big numbers. Like, for example, Emily Henry's most recent book. Is there a motivated social media presence there? Absolutely. To what extent was the publisher responsible for galvanizing them? Probably a very significant one. Is that kind of activity to another extent organic? Yes.
Yeah.
And that means the publisher can't control it.
Right.
So let's go back to what's happening inside our publishing house. The enthusiastic editor is also banging the drum in front of the sales team. Okay, so who are the salespeople talking to? They're talking to the accounts. They're talking to Barnes and Noble. They're talking to Costco, although I think Costco's
Target.
scaling back. Yeah. They're talking to Hudson, etc. And the sales process has always been to me sort of mysterious. I've never quite grasped how much flexibility there is. Like, if a salesperson is able to say to, for example, Hudson, okay, I really like this book by Carter Wilson, and I think you should actually make a special case for it, maybe figure out what sort of chart placement you can give it. Or if it's strictly algorithmic, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think what the underlying current of all of this is that it still has to be a good book. And
Yes, I
that sounds
agree.
like a very basic thing to say, but the only reason your editor is enthusiastic is because of that, because it's got something going on. So a good example is, so tell me what you did was a Barnes and Noble pick.
Mhm.
It's not that source books strong armed Barnes and Noble, or, it's just like they presented the book and they did a great job presenting the book. They were
Mhm.
enthusiastic about it, as they are for all of their books. And it just resonated with Barnes and Noble for whatever reason,
For whatever reason, you
for
can't fake it. It's
unidentifiable magic
organic.
thing,
Yeah.
which is also great. Like, it's great that it's unpredictable, because that's what makes everything exciting, because you just don't know. But something about it, something about Woman in the Window resonated, and it resonated on a universal way that made those accounts take off, made the individual reader take off, all that kind of stuff. And you can't replicate it, and you can't pinpoint it, which is frustrating, but also kind of beautiful.
It's fun and frustrating. What we are seeing now and have been seeing for a few years, ever since the rise of Book Talk and Bookstagram, is this echo chamber effect whereby an influencer will get excited about a book or somebody will get excited about a book and this will just catch on and you can't fake it and you can't force it.
Right.
And soon it becomes feast or famine. All these romantasy novels
Hmm.
and a few thrillers that are overperforming, over-indexing, and have been for a couple of years. They are being talked about online reverentially and with excitement uh, by a community of readers who seem to authentically love the book. At the same time, I'm reminded of fads that swept the nation when you and I were younger, like snap bracelets. Everyone had to have a snap bracelet.
Well, what a callback.
I mean, I certainly don't wear them anymore. Uh, Even at the time, I recognized that snap bracelets were, I mean, kind of dumb. And I'm not calling these books dumb, but I'm saying I didn't really get them.
Right. There
But
won't
I'm
be a
also
staying
saying
power.
there might not be a staying power. And yet, lots of people are buying these books in order to show them off online. And this is why publishers are making them super gifty and they're spraying the edges
Right.
and making them collectible and shareable. And I do not mean to denigrate the literary value of these books in the least. And by the way, I would love to go viral on Instagram or Book Talk,
Right. Right.
but you you can't force it.
No.
And who knows why readers are embracing certain books.
Right. So I think the lesson there is, when we talk about social media and responsibilities as an author, if you say, okay, I'm going to dedicate my life to becoming viral on Book Talk because I'm going to film every moment of my life,
Yep,
that's zero guarantee of anything.
it really is. Uh,
You
yes,
can't control it. You can't predict it. You look about what's going viral. You look at these videos that have hundreds of thousands of views, and it's just I don't get this at all kind of
Mhm.
video. That should tell you something.
And I would note that plenty of videos rack up plenty of views without actually propelling the author's career.
100%. Yeah.
Uh, and I'm not suggesting to writers that they abandon social media altogether at
Right.
all.
Right.
I am suggesting that we don't know how it works.
Right. 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 So, and then just going back real quickly, so following up on this, you had a period of time before your next book was released. Was there was there pressure? Did you have a crystallized vision of like, I'm going to be, this is my life now, and I'm going to be just producing ad nauseum? Like, what was that trajectory?
I felt quite liberated actually by the performance of the woman in the window, which might sound counterintuitive. I can absolutely understand why someone might assume that this would pressurize. I accepted and continue to accept that I will never write anything as successful as that. And that's not false modesty. It's just statistically very improbable.
Well, yeah, and when you think about like Gillian Flynn is a good example of this too. Like when, she really didn't produce much more, and she might have had, and that outperformed. I mean, it was a tremendous book, as your book was a tremendous book,
That's a good
but
book. Yeah.
it hit on all cosmic levels where it
Yep.
is very difficult to replicate that
And she has gone on to a terrific career in
in film.
television and
Right.
film.
Yeah.
Yes, as she deserves, because she's a terrific person too. I do not have a career in television or film ahead of me, I don't think. I nonetheless thought, you know what? I'm going to write a book that I would like to read. It is not going to be a zippy or relatively zippy thriller like The Woman in the Window. I had this story that I wanted to tell. It wasn't even my story. End of story refurbishes a classic of world literature, and I won't say which for viewers who are not familiar with the book because that would spoil it. But it was the story I wanted to tell, and it took me more than 6 years to tell it for a number of reasons. Most importantly, I got a dog, as you know.
That'll
This
do it. Yeah. A little life.
right. Woo! I was 4 years gone. Um, and because I have, since I turned 20, had a tough time with my mood, I had to contend with some of those.
Hmm. Yep.
I wish I'd written the book more quickly. I am, again, at the risk of sounding immodest. I'm quite proud of that book because it was tough to write and because ultimately I think it works.
Hmm.
Uh, and I think it's a more sophisticated book
Cool.
than The Woman in the Window.
Well, you've matured as a writer. Like every
And
book
yeah,
that you write, you've matured through it.
it'd be worrying if it were
Right,
less
right. Well,
less
I've
sophisticated.
certainly read plenty of authors where that's the case. Like, this person's just phoning it in.
I didn't phone it in for better or for worse. I did not phone it in. That said, the next book, whatever it is going to arrive more swiftly. Uh, because, well, you'll know this. Like, if your mind is a playground, it's not necessarily a place you want to play ceaselessly. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
it's good to
yeah.
produce.
It is. Yeah. I mean, my credo is like I'm an hour a day, but I'm 7 days a week. So I get a book done in, 8 months, and then I get told everything that's wrong with it, and I spend another 3 months redoing it. Um, I'm trying to learn. I'm learning to learn to work with my editors a little bit more closely because because I don't know what I'm doing. So I just write something, and my agent might not even know what it is, and then I'm like, here.
Yeah.
And
You figure it out.
yeah, yeah. So now I'm like, yeah, I'll try to outline it a little bit. It's not how my brain works, but I'm trying to do that more so I can see the missteps better early on, because there are always missteps. There's
Yes.
always, and it might not even be a misstep that's major. But it might be how your editor sees it. And she might say something that's just like, "Oh, my brain never would have seen that." And so
Yep.
now but now the rewrites are a lot of work. But that's the way that you see yourself now is this is my life. I am a full-time writer. This is what I
Mhm.
want to do until my dying breath.
No, I will say that while I'm inexpressibly grateful to be compensated for what I do, and I know lots of people would love to do what we do, and good luck to them. Uh, I don't I don't find it easy,
No,
and I don't find it very fun.
interesting.
Uh, You might say I don't always like it.
Yeah.
Uh,
But that's fair because that's work. That's
it's
job.
work. It's work. If I were sitting at my keyboard singing tra la la,
Yeah.
I, I, I would worry about my moods, actually.
Right.
Uh, I don't, I feel moments of satisfaction when a book is coming together the way I do when
Yeah.
there we go, fit together. I love
Yeah.
jigsaws. But it's it's not fun. And I will add, because you alluded to imposter syndrome earlier, it still blows my mind that people are willing to spend money on something that
It came out of
like
your head.
came out of my head.
Yeah. Your medicated head.
Yes, exactly. Like, huh.
Yeah.
Uh, do you must feel this way,
Yeah.
right?
And I think, for me, what it is I think with writing, because it's so personal and because the stakes are so emotionally high personally, because it is coming out of your head, you can't half-ass it. And we're so used to, as a society, half-assing our jobs. Like, we know
Yeah.
what it takes to get by, to be perceived as a good worker, but that doesn't mean you're totally bought into the vision. That doesn't mean you're totally excited about the work. But when you start to read your own stuff and you realize, I know this can be better, you have to make it better. And that's really hard to do. You have to stop and be like, fuck, I got to rewrite this now. And rewriting's hard. And so now you're looking at this whole thing is like, this is really a lot of work
Hmm.
because you're putting your full self into it and you're not used to doing that.
Hmm.
And so I think that's why some days it's just, you're just writing, as you're writing, you're knowing you're going to have to jettison all of it. And it's just frustrating because you're like, this isn't good enough, but for now it's going to have to do, but I know I'm going to have to deal with this later. And that can be very deflating.
You are also, as a writer, your own boss.
Right.
And
Right.
I, I'm sorry, go on.
And we're not all great bosses.
We're not great bosses. Not at all. No. Wow. Uh, I do miss the structure and the social stimulation of my publishing job.
Yeah,
I
totally.
miss being able to step out of my office and just see someone.
Right.
And I miss someone else saying, you got to do this at 10:30, you got to do this at
Right.
noon.
Right.
And it is very, very easy for me to do very, very little
Right.
all day
Right. Right.
because I'm not particularly self-disciplined and I'm not proud of that
Right.
either.
Which is why community is so important. Like in the writing community, like literally this podcast was created because I'm like, I like talking to writers and it's therapeutic for me. So I want to have these conversations that are in depth and personal because it helps me grow and it helps me know that maybe I'm not crazy.
Oh, if you are, then I am, but I hope that neither one of us is. I will add that End of Story, my second novel, clocked in at 109,000 words in the end, which is on the longer side for a thriller, but it's not epic.
No.
The first draft was 191,000
Oh my
words.
goodness.
Oh my goodness. So I shaved off more than 80,000. And I remember a lot of the book focused on the French Bulldog. I had not clocked this until my agent returned the first draft with her markup, and her very first note was, "Dan, I know what the French Bulldog is doing in every chapter of this book." And Carter, I reread the book and I saw to my awe that I had written a thriller about a French Bulldog that lived in a house where people kept dying. And please don't steal that idea because that is you know
That's
that's
a
a good one.
tremendous. I
That's
love it. That's amazing.
But it was, yeah, yeah, she had a starring role.
Well, Dan, listen, we're actually going long because this has
Oh,
been one of
sorry, I've
the
just been gabbing.
no, this has been one of the I'm in control of the time and I'm like, this
Okay.
is a fucking great conversation. This is going to go long, but I want to be respectful of your time as well. And we still have a bit of a storytelling to do if you're up for it.
Yes, before we do,
Yes,
very, very briefly,
please.
I do want to note that you and I bonded over our love of James, the band,
Yes.
not individual.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I was actually amazed that when you said, "Oh, you know who Tim Booth." I'm like, "You know who Tim Booth is?"
yeah,
I was
God.
impressed.
Well, thank you very much. That was a real thrill, actually.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's I was just texting with Tim Booth because they are actually coming to Boulder,
Brat.
Colorado. And I'm like, I can't believe you're coming. They're playing They're actually touring North America, surprisingly, at the end of this year, which is out of the blue, and they're only playing their album Laid, which came out in 1993, and a few other very deep cuts. So none of their new stuff. I'm like, oh my god! And they're coming to my hometown.
Wow.
So
What? Why is this?
I don't know why. I honestly don't know why. It
Okay,
must, yeah. So and there's 9 of them now. So it's yeah,
it's a
it's
collector.
amazing. Um, all right, so this is the storytelling part. This is the making it up part. It's very
Yes.
easy for minds like ours. Hopefully, I've picked 3 books kind of at random. They were just within arm's reach. You're going to choose one of these books. We're going to choose a random sentence from a random page. I'm going to read that sentence, and that'll be the first sentence in like a 2-minute long short story. So I'm going to read a sentence. You give me the
Okay.
next sentence or two. I'll do a sentence or two. It'll go
Okay.
off the rails, and then we'll call it a day.
All
Uh,
right.
so I've got Kristen Perrin's How to Solve Your Own Murder,
Uh-huh.
Robert Bailey's The Boomerang.
Uh-huh.
And so this is actually interesting. This is a guy, Jeffrey Konvitz, who wrote like a huge bestseller back in the 80s or 90s. And now this is his follow up, which is coming out, The Circus of Satan.
Well, obviously we have to go. Much as I'm keen to read the other two, The Circus of Satan speaks to me.
Yes. So this is actually coming out in June.
Who published
Uh,
that? I'm asking.
that's a good question. I don't know.
Ah. Oh.
But now I have to look. God damn it.
Sorry.
89th Street Press. I don't know
I
if
do
that's
not know them.
imprint.
Okay.
All right, so give me a page number between 1 and, good Lord, 520.
469.
Okay, so I'm going to quickly look at page 469 and see if there's a sentence that might work. Oh, there is a lot going on.
Is it busy?
That's okay. It's okay. That's part of the whole challenge. So this is improv. Okay, so the character's name is Zelig.
Zelig. Okay.
Um, Back on the street, Zelig was then wounded a short time later by a Sirocco gunman.
Okay. He looked up and saw a Maserati speeding towards him down the cobbled street.
He could tell immediately the wounds weren't severe, but there was still the blood in his mouth. Strangely, his first thought was that it made him hungry. He rolled over, stretched to his feet, and decided he was going to live.
I mean, you could end the book right there, but I'm going to keep going. Uh, he heard the whine of tires behind him as the blood settled in his cheeks and lurched to his feet. His cane had splintered beside him, so he hobbled into the doorway of an apothecary and exhaled, blood spattering the glass door.
The easy thing to do would be to ask for help,
I
but he
love
was
it.
not the type to do that. So he stood there in the doorway of the apothecary, slack jawed, scanning the counters, wondering about his next move. The door opened behind him, and to his surprise, a little girl called for him. And when he turned, he saw her holding a teddy bear, and she said, "I think you dropped this. It came out of that car."
His eyes widened. The little girl looked strangely familiar, not as though he'd met her before, but as though she were the descendant of someone he once knew well. Lorna, for example. As he struggled to formulate a response, the little girl's eyes narrowed, and slowly, she screwed the top of the teddy bear's head counterclockwise until it detached, spouting white fluff from the neck.
As shocking as it was, he knew there was something more going on. So he followed his instincts and gently probed his fingers within the fluff. And it wasn't long before he found the note rolled up tight into heavy stuck parchment paper. Oh, I
Okay.
think we end it there because we can't know what the
Oh,
note says.
we can't know what the note says, but that was very enjoyable. That kept me on my toes. Wow.
Yeah. See, now if you need an idea for your next book,
And sorry, what's the book called?
uh,
Um,
A Circus of Satan by
okay.
Jeffrey Konvitz. So
And the other two were The Boomerang by Bailey. Is that correct?
Robert Bailey, right, and How to Solve Your Own Murder, Kristen Perrin, which is
Yes, that one I've seen.
yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, that was fun. It was great to talk to you, man. I hope we get a chance to hang out more. And you know, so you're mostly in New York now,
Right now until the end of the summer. Yeah.
and then
I mean, not right now, but
and then you're moving back to the UK.
then that is the plan, although I'm probably going to be pinballing between the two for a
Okay.
while.
Okay. Right on.
Thank you, truly, Carter. Thank you so much for having me on. This has been delightful, really, really fun.
Yeah,
I'm
we could
grateful.
go on for hours, I
We
suspect.
could, we could, we could gab. Yes, I agree. I hope
Well,
to see you soon.
enjoy your time in the UK, and yeah, thanks for everything, man.
My pleasure.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. So that's it. That is my conversation with Dan Mallory, also known as AJ Finn. That was fantastic, and what a fun story. That was getting a little weird at the end, but only in the best possible way. So I kind of wanted to know what that note said in the teddy bear, but the key is to leave them hanging. Make them go to the next chapter. Please read everything you want to read about AJ Finn by going to his website, ajfinn.com, and you can check out his new book, End of Story. And if you haven't read The Woman in the Window, what are you doing? Go pick that up and read that now. And then feel free to head on over to my website, carterwilson.com, if you want to check out my books, especially my newest release, Tell Me What You Did. And if you're an aspiring writer looking for a little extra help, you can head on over to unboundwriter.com, where you can learn about the services they offer in terms of online classes, one-on-one coaching, and retreats, and all that good stuff. All right, that was a fun episode. I hope you liked it. I know I did. Another episode will be out just next week. Thank you, as always, for watching and or listening. And until next week, take care.